is our university librarian, and Scott will be walking us through the resources that are available to support dissertation students in their research efforts at the Alliant Library. So I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Scott. I am going to be placing people on mute if they haven't placed themselves on mute. And then I will also be trying to manage the chat box here if there are questions that come up. So Scott, would you prefer questions as you go through the presentation, or would you prefer folks wait to the end and then have questions?
I'm actually okay either way. So if you're, since you're monitoring the chat, if you want to just bring my attention to it as they come in. Okay.
I can do that. All right, Charisse, I will, why don't you email me directly? So Charisse, since you're not able to correct a Hawk account, I'm assuming you're having issues with Moodle, so we'll connect on that.
Thank you.
So Scott, let's go ahead and take it away.
Great, thank you. It's nice to see everyone, and I will be going over basically the library website and how to use it to get access to all the different resources that you might need for your dissertation. And as Amber said, if you have questions, you can type them in the chat and she'll yell at me. So just by way of an agenda, what I'm going to start out with is just show you like the highlights of the library website, where things are, tell you a little bit about how to use your library account, and then we'll go through different types of searching for various materials. And then we'll look at some more specialized resources like the ProQuest Dissertations database. And if there's time and interest, I can talk about citation management software like Mendeley. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. And I'm going to get rid of this because I don't like looking at myself while I do this. Any other time, really. So to start out with, some of you may be already well aware of this, but the library website is library.alliant.edu. You can, what I suggest is you just type that in, go there and bookmark it, and that way you don't have to figure out all the different steps to click through on the portal to get to it. An important thing to remember about the library website is that the login for library resources is different than the login you use for other Alliant things like email or network access. At the library, your username is your last name, and your password, sometimes called your barcode, is your Alliant ID number. And if you don't know what your ID number is, like you used to know but you forgot, just let us know and we can help you find out what it is. Speaking of letting us know things, let me give you something else to write down. In addition to the library website, the library's main email address, and the one that is hopefully easiest to remember, is library@alliant.edu. And that goes straight to me, so I can either resolve your question or get it to someone who can. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's about it. So as far as where things are on the library website, some of this you'll pick up as we go along today, just by what we wind up looking at. But some of the main things I want to point out are here, this central search box. This is going to take you to a variety of different tools, and we'll spend some time looking at each of them. The first two are what you use to search Alliant's collection, so the things that we have on the shelf at our California campuses. Link Plus lets you search what's available in a consortium of libraries that we belong to. And when you find material in Link Plus, and when there's not a global pandemic, there's an easy way to have items in Link Plus sent to your Alliant campus so you can pick them up. Article search. This is going to be how we look for scholarly journal articles. And then how do I? This is fairly new, and actually I'll just click on it so you can see what it looks like. This is our FAQ, but it's kind of an FAQ on steroids or something. So we try to make this as robust as we can. So for example, if I type in article, it's going to give you sets of instructions for just about every scenario pertaining to an article. So how do I order an article if I have the citation? How do I request an article that doesn't come up in the databases? How do I request an article when it does come up in the databases, but the full text finder link doesn't show me the full text? You get the idea. These are questions that we hear a lot, so each time we kind of think of it, we add one here to the FAQ. So if it's the middle of the night and you forgot how to do something, it's always a good idea to check our FAQ. And again, you just click on How Do I on the homepage. And to show you what one of these looks like, I'll just click on this. So some of them are fairly short, just a basic series of steps. And some of them have a little more detailed screenshots. So we try to walk you through every step of the way. Okay, so that covers this area here. Quick links, a few things I want to point out also. Our hours of operation for each of the campus libraries. There's a quick link to databases. There's also one of those up here under research. They both take you to the same spot. There's even one down here, so gets to be a little ridiculous after a while, but there's so many different ways of getting to the same information just because we don't want you to miss out on it. And then the other quick link that I want to let you know about is to the video tutorials. And these are fairly brief, like 2 or 3 minute tutorials that go over a specific task, like how to browse the issues of a journal, how to find dissertations by Alliant students. And similar to the FAQ, these are designed for when you're not able to get a hold of us for whatever reason. The downside is you have to listen to me again, but the upside is that these are available around the clock. All right, let's see other stuff that's handy for you. I'll just point out a couple of things under services. Since this is Dissertation Bootcamp, this is where we keep a link to all the information about submitting your dissertation once you get to that point. It's also where we have the link to Interlibrary Loan, and this will be something that we go over in a little bit. But just to show you what the dissertation information looks like, here we go. So here we have an outline of the process of submitting your dissertation. This tab here has links to the forms and the dissertation manual, formatting guidelines, and useful links. And then this tab called Submitting to ProQuest this starts you on the process for creating an account with ProQuest, and eventually you'll use that to upload your final dissertation for us to review and suggest any requests or revisions that might be needed.
No.
Right. Okie dokie. So those are like the main things I wanted to point out about the database. Next, I want to just show you a little bit about your library account. And the way you access that is up here. There's a link to my library account. And here we log in with last name and student ID. And the reason you would want to do this is because looking at your library account helps you keep track of the things you have checked out and when they're due back. Obviously, some of this information is less of a priority right now while we're all stuck at home, but it also lets you request extensions for material that you have checked out, but you need it longer. There is, let's see, a link here to article reach requests, and also a link to hold requests. So I'll come back to this a little later after we play around in the databases and request some articles, and we'll see that the requests I place show up here on my account right away. And it's a good way for you to check the status of things that you're waiting to receive. Similarly with holds, the difference between an article reach request and a hold is usually on a book. Let's say a book that's at another Alliant campus and it's checked out right now, but you place a hold on it so that when it's returned, it comes straight to you. So all of these things you can see by logging into your account. All right. So let's talk in general about the kind of resources that you need to write your dissertation. And whatever specifics I get into might very well be kind of superseded by the desires of your chair and your committee. So in general terms, what I usually say is that people ask, how many sources do I need? What kind of sources do I need? And the best answer is, for a dissertation, I usually see between, like 75 and 150, somewhere in there, that many sources. And as far as what those sources are, I would say about 2/3, maybe 3/4 of them are journal articles, and the rest are a mix of all kinds of stuff. Might be a YouTube video, might be a DVD, could be a dissertation by some other person. I usually refer to that whole category as things that are not journal articles because it's got so much different stuff in it. Some background noise, thank you. All right, so the reason I mention all the different types of material that are going to wind up being referenced in your dissertation is, I apologize, Amber, from when I teach using Zoom, I have a habit of jumping right on the chat anyway. So the question is it better to use just journal articles? I don't know of a dissertation where you would only use journal articles, but they're usually the majority of what you want. And there's different reasons for that. One reason is that they tend to be more current, because they're shorter and more focused. They come out more frequently than books are published. Usually they also address very specific aspects of an issue, which is what you tend to want to do in a dissertation. Books tend to have more general information. So that's kind of the reason for the breakdown in like how many of different types of materials there is or are. Right. So as I was saying, the reason I talk about what different types of materials are going to wind up being used as sources is because there isn't really such a thing as one-stop shopping for all the dissertation sources you're going to find. You need to look in different places for different types of things. So the best way I can describe it is you're going to do a whole lot of searching for articles in one place, and then in another place you're going to be searching for things that are not articles. Other question here about citing older material. And page limit. So there's no page limit for dissertations. If any kind of page limit is brought up to you, it would be by your committee, and you probably have to listen to them, but there's not a library limit on pages. For the age of sources, it's going to depend a lot on the topic. So if you're doing your dissertation on the history of psychoanalysis, naturally you're not just going to look at the last 10 years. You're going to have to go all the way back to the 1800s at least. So the age of your sources is driven by what your topic is, as well as what your committee tells you to use. So if they're telling you the last 10 years, unless it completely makes no sense, then you probably want to follow that guideline. Okay. As I was saying, so we're going to look for articles, everything that's not an article. And I like to start with everything that's not an article because that's just what I'm used to. So let's do that. So to start searching for things that are not articles, and again, I mean books, dissertations, DVDs, stuff like that, we're going to use these, like two of these three tabs here, Encore, Classic Catalog, and Link Plus. Again, Encore and Classic Catalog are searching what Alliant has in its collection, on the shelf. They are just two different interfaces to that collection. So you don't need to search both of them. In fact, you should not. You can try them both out and pick the one you like and just only use that one. I like Encore, so that's what I'm going to use. After we look at Encore, then we're going to look at Link Plus. So the idea is that when we're looking for things that are not articles, we first see what Alliant has, because that's the easiest to access. And then if we still need more material, or if there's something specific that we want and Alliant doesn't have it, then we branch out and broaden our horizons and look at Link Plus. Doing that in that order is going to locate most of the materials that you want. Occasionally there will be something that we don't have a copy of and Link Plus also doesn't have a copy of. And in those cases we use something called Interlibrary Loan. That just means one library lends something to another library. In the case of an article, it's basically just they give us a copy of it and the copy is yours to keep. In the case of a book or a dissertation or something, they lend it to us, you check it out, and you have a certain period of time to use it before you bring it back. So while I mentioned Interlibrary Loan, I'll just point out again under Services, Interlibrary Loan, we have this link here. And we'll come back to that in a second. So let's say we're doing a dissertation on leadership. So what I'm going to do is start out by seeing what Alliant has on leadership. I'm in Encore, which is searching Alliant's collection. I type in the term and click on search. Okay, so here's the results screen. Different items are down the middle here. And along the left, these things are called facets. I'm not sure why. It doesn't matter. But basically what these do is they let us narrow down the search results by different criteria. So we can narrow it down by what campus it's at, or what language it's written in, or where our search term was found, like in the title or in the subject, or what format it's in. So looking up here, we see there are 5,512 items for leadership. And let's say that I want to see a dissertation by an Alliant student. So the way to do that is to look for things that have the format thesis. And that brings it down to 403 items. So these would be Alliant dissertations that mention the term leadership. And for most of these, you'll see that there are full text links right here. This one's not yet available just because we're waiting for ProQuest to publish it. But for any of these others, if I want to look at it, I just follow the links. Right. And it takes us over to ProQuest, which is just where we store the dissertations. And here is the whole, this is a 97-page dissertation. And the PDF, you can either read online or you can download it and keep it. Usually the reason for looking up a dissertation is if you can find a dissertation that's been done on a topic that's close to yours, then it has its own lit review and its own bibliography that you can look through. And that's a good way of making sure that you're not missing any major authors, or might give you ideas for other themes that you want to explore. So usually when I find a dissertation that I'm interested in, I have no intention of reading the whole dissertation. I just want to look at certain sections like that. So I could jump all the way down here to the list of references, wherever they've put it. There we go. All right. So now we've looked at Alliant dissertations on our topic. If I wanted to look at different kinds of material, I can remove that facet and pick another one. So maybe this time, I don't really want a dissertation. I want a book, but I don't want to have to leave my house to get it. So ideally, if I could find an ebook on this subject, that would be great. So to do that, I'm going to look at e-resource. And these are all the ebooks that we have that mention leadership. Most of them have a link similar to the dissertation one we just saw. And so that link takes us to kind of the home page for that book. And we have a bunch of different options here. First of all, I'll say that we get ebooks from lots of different companies. So kind of the look and feel of this page might be different depending on what company it's coming from, but the same features are usually there. So the features that people are usually interested in are how can I read it and how can I cite it, and how can I download and or print from it. So the easiest way to read it is to choose Read Online. And for this, you just need to be connected to the internet, and that's about it. We can just turn pages of the book. You get the idea? Let me go back here. So another way of navigating the book is usually that you can go to a particular chapter or section. So if we wanted to jump right to this one, we can do that. And then up here you have tools like highlighting and getting a link, printing, downloading. Printing and downloading are limited usually, and that's just because the publisher doesn't want people printing or downloading whole copies of their book at no cost. So usually you can do about 50 pages or so per session. Similar to with a dissertation, when you find a book, you're usually not going to read the entire book. You might want just one chapter or a range of pages like that. So often it's not too much of an obstacle. You'll see that we also have the option to download the book, and what that means is download it so you can either read it on your computer when you're offline, or download it so you can put it on a device like your phone or your tablet. And this usually works, but for some people it becomes more complicated than it's worth, because the publisher wants to make sure that you only keep the book for a limited amount of time, so they're going to require that you install some free software when you download a book like that. All right. Another thing I should mention is, again, the way publishers place limitations on what you can do with the book is if you are printing or downloading even just a few pages, usually you're going to have to create a free account on that book, or excuse me, on that ebook platform. So let's try to download this PDF of Chapter 5. As you see, I have to sign in, and if I don't have an account, that means I have to first create one. And the reason for that is just so they can make sure that I'm following the rules and not downloading too much. Signing in like this also lets you do other things like you can add books to your bookshelf so that it's easier to come back to them later on. You can highlight in the book. Lots of personalization like that. Yeah, you might, I mean, depending on how much you rely on ebooks, you might have an account on ProQuest, you might have another account on Ebsco, and for all of these accounts, they're free, and you would just make up whatever username and password you want. It's not tied to your it is connected to Alliant, but you're not required to use Alliant information to create the account. Okay, so that's a mini lesson in ebooks. I'll remove that one. And carrying on here, let's just look what regular books look like. So I'm clicking on the Format Book Journal. And you can see for each of these, if I click on the link to the title, it's going to tell me just a little bit about the book. Sometimes it'll have a more detailed table of contents. it gives me the status of it, so I know if it's available, which means not checked out. Sorry, terrible speaking voice. Starts going out on me after about 10 minutes. Let's see one from a different campus. Yeah, so here's one called Leadership Theory and Practice, available at the Fresno collection. If I wanted to have this sent to San Diego, assuming we were open, I would click on Request It. I log in. The question is if you have access to all these resources for non-dissertation stuff. Yeah, as long as you're registered at Alliant, or once you become an alumni, if you come on campus, once that's possible, you can use the library both online and in person as an alumni as well. So these resources aren't just for dissertation students, they're for any kind of student at Alliant. Okay. So I think that bounced me out because we had this turned off right now. Oh, actually, no. While I was talking, I dismissed it. Sorry. So when you click on Request It, it asks you what campus you want to pick it up from. So you just answer that question and click on Submit. And then, again, ordinarily when we're open, this is transferred to the location that you're going to pick it up at, usually within 1 or 2 business days. Okay, so we've been looking at things that are in Alliant's collection. Let's say we exhaust all of these resources and we're still looking for a few more. I have 2 options. I could go back to the library homepage and do the same search in Link Plus to see what other libraries that I have access to could send stuff to me potentially. But because I'm super lazy and the library staff are very kind, I can just click on this link also, and this will run this search in Link Plus for me without having to go back and start over. So here we're in the Link Plus catalog, and you can see that while Alliant owned 5,500 items about leadership, Link Plus is a much bigger collection, so they have 36,000. And same kind of deal, we just scroll through and look for what we want. And then once you find it, you click on Request It. It'll ask you what university you're from and what campus you want it sent to. And then assuming that there's a copy available, it'll send it to you within 1 or 2 business days. This is not really working right now just because of the pandemic, but hopefully that's over pretty soon. Okay. So any questions about those searches before I move on to article searching? Books are sent to the campus, that's right. They're not shipped directly to the person who requested it. You would specify what Alliant campus you want it sent to and pick it up there after getting the notification. Good question. So this is as good a time as any to go into this. Interlibrary loan is the big category, and there's different types of interlibrary loan. Link Plus is one type of interlibrary loan. The differences in the different types are basically like where we're getting stuff from. So Link Plus lending is on hold right now because the Alliant campuses are not open yet for people to come in and pick stuff up. Some of the libraries that are in Link Plus are open and are sending materials, but until Alliant campuses reopen, that option is not available. Other types of interlibrary loan are still available, and those include article reach, which I've mentioned, and which I'll go into more detail about. So you can request articles and have those sent to you electronically. Also, this type of interlibrary loan, which I'll finally click on. This is like the most basic, non-specific type of request. And this is still working with the caveat that not all the materials that would ordinarily be available are going to be available, because some libraries that we might borrow something from are not functioning at the moment. So if you place an interlibrary loan request for a book that, ordinarily we could get a copy from UCLA, if UCLA is not operating at the moment, then they wouldn't be able to send it to us. But you can still place the request and we'll do our best to locate a copy of it. Does that answer your question? I'm going to say yes, it does. Basically, my advice about interlibrary loan, whatever the type, is place the request, and if we're not able to fill it, we will let you know that. But before we let you know that, we'll explore all the different options that we know about, so that you don't have to rack your brain trying to think of where to find it. And when you fill these out, you just click on the link for the type of material, and you fill out as much information as you have and click on Submit. This kind of basic interlibrary loan request that's right here it's like the fail-safe. So all the other special interlibrary loan requests that we go over, like Link Plus and Article Reach, if those don't work, you can always come here and fill out the form for interlibrary loan, and it will go to our staff and we'll do our best to get it. Okay, so with that being said, I'll move over to article searching for a while. And there's a couple of ways of doing this. Traditionally, people would go to our list of databases and scroll through this until they found databases that they thought would probably contain the kind of thing that they're looking for, like Medline for medical literature, or psych books for books about psychology. The problem with doing it this way is you don't necessarily know which database is going to have what you want. Also, it takes a while to go through databases one by one, and in each one do the searches that you have, that you've come up with. So, at least as a starting point, I recommend this other option, which is to just click on the article search tab. Right. So this takes us directly to a search screen for Ebsco. And the reason I recommend doing this is if we look at the Choose Databases link, you can see that all these checked boxes are the databases that we're going to be searching. So we can do our searches once and search across all of those databases. So it saves your time, and it also saves you from having to try to figure out where the information might be. So let's try a basic term here, leadership. Most of this page is full of stuff that you could use to narrow down your search. I recommend not doing that because it's much easier to screw something up without knowing what it was and then find nothing than it is to accomplish what you're trying to do. So what I suggest is doing a basic search, and then when we get to the results screen, it's easier to filter stuff out step by step there. So here we have 1.3 million results that mention leadership. Excuse me. One handy way of narrowing this down at the outset is just to go over here and click on scholarly peer-reviewed journals. Most of your chairs and committee members are going to want you to use that kind of source. Those sources are considered more reputable and reliable because they have editors that are experts in the subject that the journal covers, and they can evaluate articles that have been submitted to make sure that they're accurate, rigorous, what have you. Okay, so we filtered out a whole bunch. We went from 1.3 million to 427,000. And now we can do some more filtering before we start looking at articles. The next thing I would use is the publication date. So if we wanted to only look at the last 10 years, There we go. Right. So we again cut our results in about half, down to 200,000 some. We could also, sometimes it's handy to click on academic journals. It gets rid of some of the, there are things that are kind of on the border between popular and scholarly. So this like pushes the non-scholarly ones off of that border. So now we have 204,000. People are often tempted by the full text button. If we click that, then it's going to filter out stuff that we don't have immediate access to, meaning things that we would have to order through article reach. You're not going to see those. If you're doing a 5 or 10 page paper, that's usually not a big deal. But since you're doing a dissertation and you're supposed to be looking at everything on the topic, you generally don't want to do that. So at this point, 204,000 is still a few more than I want to tackle at 2:30 on a Friday. So to filter this further, I would click on Select a Field. And this lets you specify where in the record the search term appears. So I'm going to tell it that I want to see leadership not just mentioned somewhere in the article, but I want it in the title. On the theory that if it's mentioned in the title, then the article is more likely to focus on that. Okay, so that brings it down to 50,000. We're getting there. Next, I can also narrow it by adding additional search terms. So for this one, maybe I'm interested in leadership in the field of science. Now we're down to 9,000. Getting exciting. You'll see that each of these boxes is connected with an operator, right? So it's basically like algebra, like this is looking for leadership in the title and science mentioned anywhere. Let's say that we look through these 9,000 and there's a whole bunch of them about leadership in library science. And we didn't mean library science, we meant actual difficult science. You can change these operators and exclude a term. Let's make it more complicated. So I'm telling it to exclude anything that mentions these two words. And I put the quote marks there so that it's not just looking at those two words anywhere, like library on page 2 and science on page 14. It's looking for those two words together and in that order. So now let's see what that does. Didn't do too much. It's a nice example in theory, but it's like most of these are not about library science anyway. So just an example, but not an effective one in this case. If we wanted to, let's take this out actually. We could specify a particular branch of science. 2, that's pretty narrow, okay? But you get the idea. Once we have a list of results that's narrowed down enough to where we're comfortable with it, we can start looking at the items that are in the results. So this gives you basic citation information. If we click on the title, it's going to give us usually an abstract as well as like subject headings and some extra details. This abstract is pretty short. A very handy tool at the detailed record is the Cite tool, if you're not aware of that. If you click on this, it's going to give you the formatted citation for this item in a variety of different citation styles. So you would just go down to the APA one and copy this and paste it into your bibliography. Okay. Let me also point out that some articles have the full text attached. Is it updated to APA 7th edition? I think so. I know Ebsco said something about when they would be switching it over, but let's see if it says. Yeah, I think that has been updated. Also, these are computer generated, so you always want to double check them just to make sure if there's any glaring errors. Is there a way to know how many others have cited the article? Also, is there a way to know who the major researchers are in a certain subject area? The second part is it's kind of an awareness that you develop as you keep researching in that area. You'll start seeing the same names over and over again. You could even, I guess you could probably use Wikipedia for that, but it's certainly got its pluses and minuses. The first part, seeing how many have cited the article, there's kind of a handy answer for that. It's not in the database, but if we copy this, the title, and take that over to Google Scholar, here, if we pull up the thing, this is not a great example because this one came out in 2020, so nobody has cited it yet, which kind of makes sense. Let me find a better example. So yeah, we'll do this one. So I'm just going to grab one of these since I don't want to mess around looking for exactly that one. But the idea is that you find an article in the database, you copy its title, take it over to Google Scholar and search for it. And in Google Scholar, there is a link to who has cited it. So if we click on that, then we see a list of the 122 articles that have cited it. The other questions here. So Alliant has updated the dissertation manual to incorporate elements of 7th edition. An important thing to be aware of is that the Alliant dissertation manual is not identical to APA 7. It's also, the current one is not identical to APA 6 either. They're very similar to each other, but there's still differences. So the Alliant manual that has elements of APA 7 is in its final review stages and is going to be put on the website shortly. However, people are welcome to use the current manual or the new manual. I think what we said is through December 31st of this year. So if you are submitting something this fall, you would not have to convert it. Next question, I've had to search for articles that weren't hosted on Alliance Library, but I found it online, Google Scholar, hosted by a journal. Yeah. So yeah, as many of you have probably noticed, Alliant doesn't subscribe to every journal that exists. That's the purpose of article reach, which I'm about to go over here. But the short answer is, as long as you have the citation for it, if you go to How Do I and type in article, then just about every scenario where this could happen is described here. So how do I request an article when it comes up in the database, but full text finder doesn't show me the full text? How do I request an article that doesn't come up in the database? I found an article I want in one of the databases, but there's no link to the full text, so I can't order it from Article Reach. What do I do? So all of these are going to have steps that tell you what to do. The nice thing is that for those that are more familiar using Google Scholar, you can still do all your searching in there if you want to. And when you find things that you want, come over to the Alliant databases, look them up here. First of all, see we might have the full text, and if we don't, you can order it. So there's no need for you to pay for articles. You should be able to order them through Alliant. All right. Let's go over what that looks like now that we're talking about it. So this one has a PDF attached already, so that one's easy enough to deal with. But let's say we're interested in getting this article and it doesn't have a full text link. So what you want to do to order it is click on Full Text Finder. The first thing this does is it double checks all of our databases. Sometimes it does find the full text and it'll just display it for you. Other times, when we actually don't have it, you'll see this. And a lot of people see this and immediately close the tab and are upset that we don't have it. But what we would like you to do is look at this bottom link here. It says, can't find it, click here to request it for free through Article Reach. So we do that. Log in. It fills out the request form for you, which I think is pretty nice. And then you just click Submit at the bottom. And that article has now been requested. And what I mentioned at the outset, that request is going to show up right away on my library account. So I go over here, log in, look at Article Reach requests, and I can see this is the one I just requested. Its status is requested. Once another library supplies it, then the status will change to like available, and you click on the word available and it displays. When requests are filled, you also get an email that has a link to the full text. How long does it take to receive an article after you request it? There's some variation, but most articles arrive within 1 or 2 days. Occasionally, articles take longer than that, and it's usually because not very many libraries own whatever journal the article is from. So in those cases, sometimes the Article Reach request is canceled, and we continue trying to find it using regular Interlibrary Loan. Ebsco host asked me to sign in. Yep. So this is really important. I believe you're talking about this link here. Let me know if not. Lots of databases like Ebsco and ProQuest are going to have this option to sign in. It is an option. But if you want to be able to save articles or save searches and come back to them later, then in order to do that, you have to have an account in Ebsco. This is really similar to what we talked about with ebooks already. So to set that up in Ebsco, you would click on Sign In. And just like with ebooks, you have to create an account. It's free, and you can basically use whatever username and password you want. But there isn't an account already set up for you by Alliant. So I would click on Create an Account. I would fill this out. They send a confirmation email. I confirm it, just like setting up an email account. And then after that, I would be able to save stuff in Ebsco. Go back. I think I have an account. Let's see if that works. Yes. Okay, so now I'm signed in, and let me get this out of the way. What does that get me? At any point, whether you have an account or not, as you're going through a list of results, let me make this set of results bigger, first of all. Right. So there's some options that you have whether or not you have an account. As I'm going through this list of 9,000 articles, I can click this blue folder thing and add them to a folder that I want to come back to. This thing is kind of slow right now. So. Fine. So, right. So after I add some stuff to a folder, then I have the option to go to folder view. And here I'll see a list of all the things that I added to the folder or marked. And I can do things like print those out as a batch or email them as a batch, or I can sort them into folders, create new folders, all kinds of organizational stuff, which is nice. All this stuff is not required. It's just optional. So it's there if you want to do it. However, that being said, if you decide to start using these features in Ebsco or in ProQuest, whatever, you have to be absolutely sure that every time you use that database, you sign in. If you forget to sign in and you spend 8 hours saving articles, you're going to come back the next day and they're going to be all gone because it didn't know whose account to associate them with because you forgot to sign in. And unfortunately, there's no way for us to fix that. It's actually operating the way it's supposed to, so it's not a question of fixing it. Let's see here. Can articles from different databases be stored in one place? Yes, but basically what you're talking about is using something called citation management software. And there are different options for doing that. But what it lets you do is create one central database that houses the citations as well as the source documents for all the articles that you ever encounter. So when it comes to citation management software, there's different products. There's some options that are free and some that you pay for. EndNote is the famous one that costs a couple $100. I use one called Mendeley that's free. I'll just show you briefly what it looks like. Takes a second to open up. Yeah, Zotero is also good, and Zotero is also free. I'm just more familiar with Mendeley, but they both do most of the same stuff. So I have this library in Mendeley. These are articles that I've downloaded over the years, and each time I download one that I want to hang on to, I add it to my Mendeley library, and I can organize these by folders that I create. Cite this for me. I've used it. I think there might be a cost associated with it, but I'm not really sure. But it does a decent job of citing some stuff. I think basically you put in information about what you're citing, and it just organizes it for you according to whatever style you specify. Mendeley and other citation managers also do that. So for example, Mendeley has a plugin for Microsoft Word. So you just tell Mendeley, I want to use APA 7th edition. And then as you're typing along, well, why don't I do it? The answer to which is the best depends a lot on personal preferences. I've looked at a few over the years, and Mendeley is the one I like the best, for whatever that's worth. But the old saying is that you can get used to anything except being hungry. So I think Microsoft Word also has a references option, which is these buttons here, that helps you do some of this stuff. So let's say this is my Mendeley library, and I'm typing along in Microsoft Word. Hopefully I don't type something obscene. And now I want to cite something. So under the References tab, this whole thing appears once you install the plugin. I tell it I want to insert a citation and go to Mendeley. So now, let's see, not that. let's see. So I go through my Mendeley library and find what it is I want to cite. And then I click on Cite. So it inserts the in-text citation, the brief version. And then I carry on typing. Insert another citation. Oh, yeah, I forgot to do this part first. So now I go to Mendeley and locate what I want to cite. It inserts that one too. You get the idea. Once I do that for a couple hundred pages, I'm ready to type up the list of references and get on with my life. So now I click on Insert Bibliography, and it just pops in all the information from Mendeley into this, into APA 7, which is the style that I've identified. So I don't really have to worry about typing up a bibliography. Mendeley does that for me. The other, my initial answer to is there one place where you can do this is that the databases themselves don't offer that, because Ebsco is going to help you organize Ebsco articles, and ProQuest is going to help you organize ProQuest articles. So it's nice to have like an external application that lets you store whatever you decide to put into it. Mendeley is free to download. There are versions for Mac and Windows and Linux. Also, you can put it on your Android, Apple phone, iPad, Android tablet. So I think there's an option to pay for additional storage with Mendeley, but I've never come close to running into the storage limit. So why did I do that? There we go. So kind of the workflow for this would be as follows. So I find this article that I want. I click on the PDF. So now that I've got the PDF, I download it. Then I go into Mendeley. This is the article. It just has this generic name, but I also don't care. So I grab the PDF, drag it into Mendeley, and it immediately adds it to the library. And there's a variety of ways that I could locate it. So I could look at recently added, and this is it. You might have noticed this is kind of an old article, really old. So the information about the article looks kind of weird. So I would have to clean all this stuff up at the time that I enter, or excuse me, at the time that I add it to Mendeley. But then once I've done that, it's taken care of for basically the rest of time.
Wonderful. Scott, I want to be cognizant of your time and everyone else, and we are at the 3 o'clock hour, and this has been incredibly informative. I really appreciate the time you took to walk us through all the tips and tricks. I want to let everyone know that we have been recording this session, and again, we will be posting it on our Dissertation Toolbox resource on the Alliant Student Hub. I'm also going to send everyone who attended today a very short Qualtrics survey, 5-6 questions, and would really ask that you do that quick survey. We're really looking for trying to assess how effective our presentations are in helping you to expand your knowledge base about dissertation support resources, and also give us some ideas for future. And it looks like Scott here has graciously offered, please He can do some one-on-ones to go over this more in depth. And again, Scott, we thank you for that. So with that, I'm going to stop recording and we're going to end our session and have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Thank you much.